Hi, welcome to another episode of Professional Spotlight. I'm Shuvi Powers. I'm the Director of PR and Social Media with Girls in Tech. My guest today is MeghanWilker. She is the CEO of Clockwork, and she's also the co-founder of GeekGirlsGuide.com. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
So, Megan, take a minute and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
I'm the COO of Clockwork, as you mentioned earlier, and also co-founded GeekGirlsGuide.com, which was a website that Nancy Lyons, who's the CEO of Clockwork, and I founded in 2006, really as a place to invite people in to talk about technology in sort of a safe place. We just had started to notice that a lot of people, both in our personal lives and our clients, were really holding technology at arm's length and feeling like, oh, I just leave that to my husband, I leave that to my kids. And it was really frustrating for us. At the same time, I think there's this psychological thing between people who feel like they get computers and people who feel like they don't. And it starts to create this situation where the people who feel like they don't get computers feel like they never will. And I think some of that comes from the environments they're in, even at work, where they have an issue with a computer and they call the IT person to help them, and they're made to feel sort of stupid, like they did something wrong. And so it just creates this feedback loop that I think is really unhealthy about technology, where people are made to feel like either you just start programming when you're 9 years old because you're a genius, or you just will never understand it. And so we really wanted to create a place where people could feel like they could come to our speaking engagements, or they could come to our site and ask any question and not be made to feel stupid. And that the focus of our content would be about helping people think about technology versus the mechanics of how to do something. So it's like, we're not going to teach you how to tweet, but let's talk about what Twitter means in a professional context, in a personal context. Let's talk about how social media is changing our personal relationships, how it can enhance your professional life. So it was really just a place to have that conversation with people, and invite them into a space where they might not always feel welcome or like they belong.
Nice. And anybody can go to this website and get involved with this.
Yeah, and at the beginning we blogged a lot more. We've now shifted to doing more podcasting, just because it was really difficult for us to keep up with the schedule of blogging, and it was much easier for the two of us to get in a room with a microphone and just talk about some issue that was happening. So we took about a year hiatus from podcasting because our schedules were so crazy, but now this year we're back in the habit of trying to do them once a month. So sometimes we'll interview someone and talk about how they're using a particular technology. Our last podcast, actually a year ago, was right before the Boston Marathon, and we were interviewing this woman who I met online, who became a client of ours, who ended up becoming inspired to start running through seeing some of the posts that I was doing on Facebook about learning how to run. And so it was a podcast all about social fitness. And how she had, gotten inspired to start running in the first place just through exposure on social media and these connections that we had made that became friendships and professional relationships, but then also the types of technology that she was using to help her train, to help her connect with other runners, and to create this community of support. So we talk about all kinds of things. We're doing one next month that's talking about online bullying, but not of children, of adults. So we're actually interviewing a woman who's a fashion blogger locally, who's getting really pretty viciously attacked by people who just don't like her blog for some reason. And so it's really just talking about what is that, it's really easy to say, like, bullying should stop. And when people think that, I think they think about kids in schools. And there's a lot of stuff happening on the internet that are just, people behaving badly. So it's, talking about that. What does anonymity do? What does putting yourself out there do to you as a person and as a professional? And what do you kind of open yourself up to in terms of commentary when you're sharing so much of your life publicly?
And I think that one of the challenges is just start talking about it more. So I think it's great that you're starting to do that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I like it.
So tell our viewers a little bit about how you got interested in technology in the first place.
Gosh, it's an interesting question. I don't really come from a technical family necessarily. So my parents, I think, were kind of into gadgets. So like we had a Commodore 64 when those came out. But I mean, I don't know why we had it, because no one in our family really knew how to use it. We'd mess around on it. So I feel like I sort of grew up being exposed to technology as a user, and I was always really interested in it and compelled by it. So I would love to spend time on the computer, but I didn't necessarily have anyone in my life that could help me understand the inner workings of it, or how to turn what I was doing into a career.
Sure.
So I really spent most of my life up until my 20s thinking I would either be an elementary school teacher or a writer. So I went to school at the University of Minnesota and studied copywriting. I thought I would be a copywriter in an advertising agency. And that's mostly because my dad is a copywriter. And so you sort of like at that age are just like, I don't know what to do with my life. And you find someone and sort of like, I guess I'll do that.
Right.
So I thought I'll do that. And so I got my degree from the U of M, and I was working at a marketing agency, and I ended up meeting Nancy Lyons, who I mentioned earlier, who's the CEO of Clockwork. And at the time, she was the president of an internet service provider in Minneapolis called Bitstream Underground.
Okay.
So it's a super long story that I won't torture you with, but the short version is we met, and I was like, I need to work for her. I need to do what I don't want to be in marketing and advertising. I want to do what they're doing. They're building websites. They're doing stuff that I like to mess around with. So that was sort of the turning point in my career where I shifted into working for a digital agency where we were building websites, and I was a project manager. So my talent is really in seeing what needs to get done and figuring out how to get everybody coordinated toward that goal and then making it happen. And so that's how I sort of translated my love of technology as a user into an actual job.
Okay. So, Megan, tell us a little bit about what you do at work.
Well, I mentioned earlier my title is Chief Operating Officer, which is a little vague and hard to describe because that position of COO really changes from company to company depending on who the CEO is and what the company is. So COO is one of those jobs that really exists directly in relation to the CEO that they're working with. But at the core, what I do is I'm a project manager. So when I started in my career, I was managing projects for clients. Now I still look at what I'm doing as managing projects, but my client is Clockwork, the organization I work for. And the people and my team members are different departments and groups, and maybe not necessarily on the client side. But at the heart, at the core, what I'm really good at is figuring out what needs to get done and making it happen. And whether it's making it happen on my own or figuring out who needs to be a part of the team that's going to make it happen, making sure they have what they need, that's really what I do. And I really love it. That process of kind of figuring out how all of the team members tick. You know, project teams or even teams at work that aren't working for a client, it's like a chemistry experiment. The way that somebody behaves in a project team really depends on the other people in the environment around them and how they all react and interact with each other and what sort of environment they're in. And I really love observing that, like what's going to motivate this person? Why are they so different on this team than they were on this other team some number of months ago or with this different mix of people?
Sure.
And I love that process of giving everybody the information they need and just making things happen. So it's a weird job because you're not always the one doing the work.
Yeah.
And if you're doing your job really, really well, you're almost invisible. Like people almost shouldn't know you're there. And I think that's actually one of the problems with project management is people notice it the most when it's awful, when it's clumsy and things aren't getting done. And so most people's mental model of what a project manager is the bad side of it. Like the people they've worked with that were not helpful, that didn't give them what they needed, and they just think like life would be so much easier if we didn't have this project manager in our way.
Right.
So that's kind of a weird part of the job. When you're doing it really well, you should be like a ghost. Okay. Like things just flow when you're doing your job well. So, but I love that.
That's really interesting. I don't think I'd put that in that context, but it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
I mean, haven't you been on projects where you're just like, this is the worst?
Yeah.
But when it's really, really good,
yeah,
you don't notice it.
You take it for granted.
Yeah, I've compared it in the past to air quality. Like you don't notice air when it's good. You only notice it when it's choking you.
Yeah.
And it's the same is true of project management.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Yeah, so if I'm doing my job really well, you don't even know I'm here.
Great. That's awesome. I love that analogy. So tell us a little bit about if you've had a chance to increase your skill set over the years, formally or otherwise.
I've kind of done a combination of both. I've taken some classes on Coursera, which I really love that website.
I do too.
I had to actually ban myself from taking any more courses because I get all excited and I sign up for all these classes and then I freak out because I don't have time to do them all.
Yeah.
And as a project manager, I really like to finish things. So
yeah.
I had to,
closure. We need to get this done.
Yeah, I had to take a break from Coursera, but they just offer so many great courses. So I've taken a couple of courses through there, and that's probably as formal as my learning has gotten. You know, I'll go to conferences and take classes, but I think most of what I learn is just from observing and then trying to push myself into new challenges. So the job that I have now is a job that I asked for like a year ago. And I just said, this is what I started doing research, and I just said, this is what I think I do, and this is how I think I could support this organization, and here's what I think this job could look like. And so it was scary to me a little bit. But that's how I try to grow. Like, I feel like the things that really make me nervous and freak me out, that's probably a signal that it's something I should try to stretch myself into.
Okay. So if you could do something else, what would it be?
A totally different career.
Yeah.
I would be a Bollywood dancer.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah. I don't know, probably like 14 years ago, just randomly picked up a Bollywood movie out of Blockbuster. It was Lagan. It was nominated for an Oscar that year, so I think that's why it was in like mainstream video stores.
Yeah.
So I rented it and I went home and watched it and was like, that was amazing. So I started watching all these Bollywood movies, and like 4 years ago, I did an Ignite presentation about Bollywood.
Oh, okay.
And somebody who was watching the live stream tweeted me and said, oh, if you like Bollywood, you should check out my friend's dance class. So that's led me to like 2 different dance classes in town, and now I'm on a dance team, a Bollywood dance team.
What do you guys do?
We do all kinds of performances. We're performing at Festival of Nations in early May. And actually I'm not a part of this show, but they're going to put on a Fringe show as well. I think they're launching a Kickstarter for that soon. So it's just, I didn't dance growing up, so it was something I came to as an adult.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the like things that make you nervous. Moving my body in rhythm, like not one of my strengths, but I just was like, okay, I'm just going to let go of feeling like I look stupid, and I'm going to try this. And it was so much fun that I just kept doing it. And now, like, I think I'm okay. I'm not a remarkable dancer by any means, but I'm very enthusiastic.
Yeah, and you're enjoying it, it sounds like. Yeah. So that's great.
And it's like, it uses a different part of my brain. Like, I have to work so hard to remember choreography. I have to work so hard to get my body to do things that come much easier to somebody who's been dancing for 10 years. But it really it uses a totally different part of my brain that I don't use at work. And I think that's part of the reason that I like it. I can have a really tiring day at work and then go to dance, and I'm still tired, but it's so fun because I'm just like using something different.
So, Megan, you've written a book, Interactive Project Management. Can you tell us a little bit about how that opportunity presented itself and a little bit about what the book entails?
I mentioned that Nancy and I had started geekgirlsguide.com, so we started writing a lot and speaking a lot through that, and we speak about a multitude of different topics. One of the things that people really still, even after 5 years, want us to talk about is social media and like, what does it mean? And, oh my God, what do I do? So we talk a lot about kind of how to think about social media and personally and professionally. We talk about company cultures and how to create cultures that are user-centered and thinking of users not only as the users of your product, but thinking of your employees as the users of your organization. And also talking about sort of this role of project management. So we gave a keynote speech at MiniWebCon, I think it was 3 years ago, and there was a book editor in the audience at MiniWebCon, and so he approached us after the talk and said, I'd like to publish a book with you guys. And I said, that's cool, because I sent you a book proposal and you declined it.
Oh, no.
And he was like, oh, really? Yeah. So that was kind of funny that I was like, yeah, I tried, but I'm glad now that you saw us in person that you want to publish a book with us. So that's kind of how it came about. So we just rewrote an earlier proposal that he had rejected and kind of shifted it around a little bit. I think our first proposal was around social media, because we were like, this is what people ask us to talk about all the time. Yeah. And I think he, rightly so, recognized that there just was going to be a really limited shelf life for a book about social media. Whereas something that's about project management, that's something that's going to have a much longer life and I think was also much more needed. Yeah. Because the type of project management that we talk about in the book is not just pure software development, and it's not really a creative agency process. And that's where most organizations tend to fall. They're either a really creative driven shop where the creative director is driving everything and everybody else just has to figure out how to please that person. Right. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it's really focusing on like, is it agile? Is it waterfall? Let's have a holy war over like which one of these methodologies we like the best. Yeah. But those are fine. Like neither of those are wrong, but they're very focused on software. And digital or interactive work is unique in that it is part creative, and it's part marketing and strategy, and it's part software. There's so many facets to it that you can't really take either one of those processes. So we try to define a process that really took the client into account, the end user into account, the creatives, the developers, involving developers a lot earlier on in the process. Like all of these things that I think are necessary to get the best work and the best outcome for the client, and really helping people to think differently about one another. You know, one of the points we try to make strongly in the book is that I don't think developers are given enough credit for being creative thinkers. They are seen in many organizations as the people that you throw work to produce versus the people that you involve at the front end to solve the problem.
Right.
So we really were kind of trying to change everybody's perceptions of everybody else. Like it's not really, the client isn't stupid and the creative isn't a jerk and the developer is not like antisocial. Like everybody just needs to sort of change their mental framework of one another and just better understand their role in the process. And to really be collaborative, you gotta understand what everybody else is doing. So we wrote it to help define what that role is of a project manager, to establish it as a leadership role in organizations, not just a trafficker of deadlines and dates. And then also to help everybody on all ends of the spectrum really understand, like so clients can come in the door really understanding what's this process that I'm going to be asked to participate in. So I think that's another difference with the kind of work that we do. It's the client can't just be involved in approving the work here and here. They really have to be collaborating
part of the process.
Point A to B.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, if you were an inanimate object, what would it be?
Inanimate object. I kind of can't imagine myself being inanimate. Maybe like a slinky.
Okay. Why slinky?
I don't know, because it's like, it's inanimate, but once you get it going, it it really goes, and it's kind of weird and flexible, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
All right, we'll take that. Fair enough. So have you received any good career advice that you'd like to pass on?
My sister was heading into a really difficult situation, and my mom just turned to her and said, "Get in there and be a woman."
I like it.
Yeah, I think.
All right, everybody get in there and
be a woman.
I love it. So do you have any last words for our viewers?
Get in there and be a woman. No, I would just say be yourself and pursue the things that you want to pursue. I think in a lot of different phases of my life, I didn't look the way people wanted me to look. I didn't act the way people wanted me to act. I just didn't fit in. And that feels so awkward when it's happening. But the more you're true to that, even when it feels like you're not fitting in with the people around you, the more you're true to that, the more you eventually do find your people and your place. And you just end up developing a much more stronger sense of who you are. So I would say just that's why I picked a slinky. Just stay weird. Stay weird.
Stay true to yourself.
Yeah, stay true to yourself.
Like
when you like things that people around you don't like, that doesn't make the things that you like invalid.
Yeah. I love that advice. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me for another episode of Professional Spotlight. Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on our website. And also I'd like to give a shout out to Olson for hosting us here again today. Thank you. Bye-bye.